There is a glass jar sitting on the windowsill of my kitchen right now. It is half full of water, a few cloves stuck into the flesh of a sliced lemon floating on top, and nothing else. Every fly that comes within 15 feet of that jar turns away from it, not toward it, away. My kitchen door stands open most of the day in summer, the way Amish kitchen doors have always stood open, because the woman of the house is in and out 40 times before noon, and there is no sense closing it behind her every trip. And yet I cannot remember the last time a fly landed on the counter, on the bread, on the meat hanging in the springhouse, or on my children while they eat at this table. No screen door, no fly strips hanging from the ceiling, no electric zapper humming in the corner, just a jar, a lemon, and a handful of cloves that cost about 40 cents at any grocery store. My name is Levi Troyer. I am Amish. I farm 61 acres in Holmes County, Ohio. I keep a dairy cow, 6 hogs, and 40 laying hens, every one of which produces exactly the kind of waste that breeds flies by the thousand if you let it sit. And yet my kitchen, my porch, and my dinner table stay nearly free of them through the worst of an Ohio summer, while my English neighbors run electric zappers that crackle all night and buy sticky paper that catches 40 flies and looks like something out of a horror picture hanging from their porch ceiling. My neighbor Daniel asked me about this 2 summers ago. He had just started keeping a few backyard chickens, 3 hens, nothing like my 40, and within a month his patio had become unusable in the evenings. Flies on the table the moment food appeared. Flies in the kitchen the second the back door opened. He had bought an electric bug zapper for $35 that killed almost nothing useful and ran up his electric bill all summer. He had bought fly strips, the sticky brown ribbons that hang from the ceiling and catch flies until they are covered and have to be thrown away and replaced, $4 a roll every 2 or 3 weeks all season. He had bought a chemical fly spray that worked for an hour and then needed reapplying, can after can, at $6 a can. He did the math out loud to me, standing in his driveway. $60, $70 over a summer, and the flies were still there every evening when he sat down to eat. I told him what my grandmother taught me. He looked at me the way people look at you when the answer is so much simpler than what they have already spent money on that it is almost embarrassing. Before I tell you what goes in the jar, I want you to understand something about flies that the can of spray will never explain to you, because if it explained it, you would stop buying the spray. A fly does not navigate the way you might think. It does not see a kitchen and decide to enter it. A fly is driven almost entirely by smell, and its sense of smell is built around finding 2 things: decaying organic matter to lay eggs in and sugar to feed on. Everything a fly does, the erratic flight pattern, the way it circles before landing, the way it seems to appear out of nowhere the instant you set food on the table, is smell-driven behavior refined over millions of years to find rot and sugar as efficiently as possible. This means a fly's strongest sense is also its greatest weakness. Certain smells that are pleasant or neutral to you are overwhelming and repellent to a fly because they interfere with the very mechanism the fly depends on to find food and breeding sites. Find the right smell and you are not killing the fly. You are making your kitchen invisible to it. The fly flies past, never landing, because its primary sense, the one thing it relies on more than sight, is telling it that nothing here is worth investigating. This is the entire principle behind everything I am going to show you today. We are not poisoning flies. We are making ourselves disappear from their world. The first and oldest tool is clove. Whole cloves, the dried flower bud you find in the spice aisle of any grocery store, the same ones used in baking and pickling. Cloves contain a compound called eugenol in high concentration. To a human nose, eugenol smells warm, sweet, faintly medicinal. It is most of what you are smelling when you smell a clove. To a fly, eugenol is overwhelming. It interferes directly with the fly's olfactory receptors, the same receptors it uses to locate food and egg-laying sites. A fly encountering a strong eugenol scent does not investigate further. It turns away the same way you would turn away from a smell so strong it made your eyes water. The jar I keep on my windowsill works on this principle entirely. You take a lemon, cut it in half, and press whole cloves into the cut flesh of each half, 15 or 20 cloves per half, pressed in close together so the exposed surface is dense with them. Set the lemon halves cut side up on a small plate or directly on the windowsill. As the lemon sits in the warmth of the kitchen, the cut surface slowly releases both the citrus oil from the lemon and the eugenol from the cloves, and the combination creates a wall of scent that flies will not cross. Replace the lemon halves every 3 to 4 days as they dry out and stop releasing scent. A bag of whole cloves costs about $3 at the grocery store and lasts the entire season. The lemons cost whatever lemons cost, 50 cents to $1 each. This is the cheapest, simplest version of the principle, and it is strong enough on its own to keep an average kitchen door area clear through most of the summer. For a stronger version, for a porch or patio where the open air dilutes the scent more quickly, you steep whole cloves in white vinegar for 2 days, a quarter cup of cloves to a cup of vinegar in a sealed jar, shaken once a day. Strain it, and you have a concentrated spray. A few spritzes around the porch railing, the door frame, and the legs of the outdoor table, reapplied every few days, extends the same principle across a larger open space where the still air method of the lemon and clove plate is not quite strong enough. The second tool is one my grandmother used specifically in the kitchen and the springhouse, where meat and dairy hang and where flies are drawn with particular intensity because of what they smell. It is a simple sachet of dried herbs, bay leaf, mint, and basil in roughly equal parts, tied into a small piece of cheesecloth or an old stocking and hung near doorways, windows, and anywhere food is stored or prepared. Each of these 3 herbs works through the same mechanism as the clove but with different compounds. Bay leaf contains cineol, mint contains menthol, basil contains a range of volatile oils, all of them strong-smelling to a fly's sensitive receptors in ways that disrupt its ability to locate the very things it is searching for. The reason my grandmother used 3 herbs together rather than one is the same reason a farmer rotates crops rather than planting the same thing in the same field every year. Different fly species respond with different intensity to different scents. A combination covers more ground than any single herb alone. To make the sachet, take dried bay leaves, dried mint, and dried basil. You can grow all 3 easily in a small kitchen garden, or buy them dried from any grocery store spice section for a few dollars total. Crush them slightly between your palms to release more of their oil before tying them into the cloth. A small sachet, about the size of your palm, hung near a doorway or window will work for 2 to 3 weeks before it needs refreshing with new herbs. My grandmother hung one of these directly above the door to the springhouse, where the meat was kept cool through summer, and another near the kitchen window above the sink. I asked her once why she used 3 herbs instead of just one, since mint alone seemed to smell strong enough to do the job by itself. She said her mother told her that 1 herb works on some flies and not others, but 3 herbs together work on nearly all of them. She did not know the word species. She knew, from watching for decades, that variety worked where a single answer fell short. The third tool addresses a different problem entirely. Not the adult fly circling your kitchen, but the breeding ground that is producing new flies faster than any repellent can keep up with. This is the part most people skip entirely, and it is the reason the zapper and the sticky strips never fully solve the problem. You can kill or repel every adult fly currently in your kitchen, and within 3 days there will be just as many, because somewhere on or near your property there is moist, decaying organic matter producing new flies continuously, and no amount of clove or mint addresses that source. The most common culprits are the obvious ones once you know to look for them. A trash can that is not sealed tightly and gets opened daily, releasing a plume of scent each time. A compost pile that is too wet and not turned often enough, creating an anaerobic, slimy condition that flies are specifically drawn to. pet waste left in a yard for more than a day. Standing water anywhere, a clogged gutter, a forgotten bucket, a saucer under a potted plant that has accumulated organic debris. If you keep any livestock, even a few backyard hens, the manure is the single largest fly-breeding contributor on most properties, and how you manage it determines almost everything about your fly population for the rest of the season. Here is what we do, and it is the practice my grandfather called walking ahead of the problem rather than chasing it. For a compost pile, the key is moisture and turning. A compost pile that is too wet, that sits undisturbed for weeks, becomes a fly nursery. Turn it every 4 to 5 days with a pitchfork, working the outer material into the center where the heat of decomposition is greatest. A properly turned, properly aerated compost pile generates internal heat that most fly larvae cannot survive, and the regular disturbance prevents the kind of settled, slimy, anaerobic pocket where eggs are laid successfully. For poultry or livestock manure, the same principle applies at a larger scale. Manure that sits wet and undisturbed breeds flies within days. Manure that is spread thin, allowed to dry, or composted properly with regular turning breaks the breeding cycle almost entirely. My grandfather mucked the chicken coop every 3 days without exception, spreading what came out thinly over a composting area rather than letting it pile and sit. This single habit, more than any spray or trap, is the reason a farm with 40 hens has fewer flies than a backyard with 3. For trash, a sealed lid is not negotiable. A trash can without a tight lid is, from a fly's perspective, an open invitation broadcasting exactly the scent it has evolved to find. A lid that seals, checked and replaced if the rubber gasket has degraded, removes one of the largest sources of attraction on most suburban properties within days of being addressed. For standing water, walk your property once a week, the same walk my grandfather called walking the line. A habit as old as keeping livestock at all. Any place that holds water for more than a few days is breeding something, whether it is flies, gnats, or worse. A clogged gutter holding rainwater. A saucer under a potted plant that never quite dries. An old tire leaned against the barn that collects every rain that falls. A wheelbarrow left tipped the wrong way after a storm. None of these look like a problem until you understand that a film of water the size of your palm, sitting undisturbed for a week, is enough for several generations of flies to complete their entire life cycle. This single habit, walking the property with an empty bucket and tipping out every hidden pocket of water, removes breeding sites most people do not even know exist on their own land. My grandfather did this walk every Saturday morning of his life, rain or no rain, the same way he checked the fences and the same way he checked the hens. He considered it part of the farm's maintenance, not separate from it, and that is exactly the right way to think about it. I want to add one more thing here, because it is the piece that ties source control to the scent barriers in a way most people never connect. Even a property with no standing water and a tightly sealed trash can will still draw flies from the neighbor's yard, from the field beyond the fence, from anywhere within the half-mile or so a fly will travel looking for food. You cannot control what is breeding on land that is not yours. This is exactly why the scent barriers matter even after the source work is done. The lemon and clove, the herb sachets. These are not just for the flies your own property produces. They are the line of defense against everything drifting in from elsewhere. And that is why both halves of this system work together rather than one replacing the other. Now let me walk you through the full system in order, the way I would explain it to someone standing in their kitchen, swatting at flies for the 3rd time in an hour. Start with the source. Before you hang a single sachet or set out a single lemon, walk your property and find what is breeding the flies you already have. Seal your trash lid. Address your compost pile if you have one. Manage any livestock waste promptly. Empty standing water. This step alone, done thoroughly, will reduce most fly populations significantly within a week, because you have cut off the supply of new flies rather than only addressing the ones already present. While that takes effect, set your first lemon and clove plate on the kitchen windowsill or near the most used door. Replace it every 3 to 4 days. Hang your herb sachets, bay, mint, basil, near every doorway and window where flies have been a problem. Refresh them every 2 to 3 weeks or whenever you press one and notice the scent has faded. For outdoor spaces, mix your clove and vinegar spray and apply it to porch railings, table legs, and door frames every few days, more frequently if rain has washed it away. There is one more piece to this system, and it is the one most people are surprised to learn, because everything up to this point has been about repelling flies, and this last piece is about something nearly opposite: drawing the stubborn remainder away from you on purpose, the way a farmer sets a trap line rather than fencing every inch of the property. No repellent, however well placed, handles every single fly. A few will always slip through, drawn by something stronger than the scent barrier can override, or simply unlucky enough to land before they smelled the cloves. For those, you do not fight harder with more clove or more herb. You give them somewhere else to go, somewhere they want to go more than they want your kitchen, and you put it far enough away that it pulls rather than pushes. My grandmother kept what she called the catching jar, set well away from the house, near the edge of the garden by the fence line, where nobody sat and nobody ate. It was a wide-mouthed jar with a paper cone fitted into the opening, narrow end down, and inside the jar a few inches of sugar water mixed with a small piece of overripe fruit, a banana peel, a bruised apple, whatever was on hand from the kitchen that week. Flies are drawn powerfully to the smell of sugar and ripening fruit, far more strongly than they are drawn to anything in a clean kitchen with cloves on the sill. They find the cone, follow the scent down into the jar, and once inside, the shape of the cone makes it far easier for them to fly down toward the sugar water than to find their way back out against the narrowing paper walls. Within a few days, the jar does the work that no spray ever quite manages, drawing the flies that would otherwise have kept testing your door toward a place you have set aside specifically for them, far from your table. The construction takes 10 minutes. Take any wide-mouthed jar. A mason jar works well. Roll a piece of paper into a cone narrow enough at the tip to leave a small opening, perhaps a 1/4 inch across, and wide enough at the base to rest in the jar's mouth without falling through. Tape the seam of the cone so it holds its shape. Set it narrow end down into the jar, with the wide end resting against the rim. Pour 2 or 3 inches of sugar water into the jar beneath the cone and drop in a piece of very ripe or slightly overripe fruit for extra draw. Set the whole thing on a fence post, a stump, or a small table at the far edge of your property, well away from where people gather. Empty and refresh it every 4 or 5 days. The principle is simple, and it has been used in farmhouses and market gardens for longer than anyone can date with certainty, because the logic of it, give the pest somewhere better to be than where you are, works on more than just flies. It is the same reasoning behind every trap crop a farmer plants at the edge of a field to draw insects away from the main harvest. You are not eliminating the population. You are redirecting it, and redirection done consistently accomplishes nearly everything elimination promises without the ongoing cost. Within 2 weeks of doing all of this consistently, addressing the source, maintaining the scent barriers, and giving the stragglers somewhere better to go, most households see their fly problem reduced to almost nothing. Not because every fly within a mile has been killed, but because the breeding has been interrupted, the kitchen has become uninteresting, and the remainder has been drawn elsewhere on purpose. I want to say something about why this knowledge is not the first thing anyone tells you when you complain about flies. The fly control products sold at any hardware store, the zappers, the sticky strips, the chemical sprays, share one thing in common. They all require you to buy them again. The zapper needs replacement bulbs and runs on electricity every night of the season. The sticky strips fill up and need replacing every 2 to 3 weeks for the entire summer. The spray empties and needs another can within days if you are using it as directed. None of them address the source. All of them are designed to manage the symptom indefinitely, which means all of them are designed to be purchased indefinitely. A jar of cloves costs $3 and lasts the season. A bay leaf, mint, and basil sachet costs less than $2 and lasts weeks before needing fresh herbs you may already be growing. Walking your property and managing waste sources costs nothing but a habit. There is no company built around selling you a habit, so no company tells you that the habit is the most important part of the solution. This is not a conspiracy. Nobody is hiding the cloves from you on purpose. It is simpler and quieter than that. There is no profit margin in a 40-cent solution that works for a month, so nobody manufactures a campaign to tell you about it. The knowledge survives only in households where someone remembered to pass it down, the way my grandmother passed it to my mother, who passed it to me, who is passing it to you now because there was no one else left to do it. So here is what I want you to do this week. Walk your property and find what is breeding the flies you already have. A trash can without a sealed lid, a compost pile that needs turning, standing water in a forgotten corner. Fix what you find. Then go to the grocery store and buy a bag of whole cloves, a lemon, and if you can find them, dried bay leaf, mint, and basil. Make your first jar. Hang your first sachet. It will cost you less than $5 total. And come back here and tell me in the comments, where in your house or yard have the flies been the worst this summer? The kitchen, the porch, near a trash area, near pets? Tell me what state you are in and what you find when you walk your property looking for the source. I read every one of these. The stories you send back from your own kitchens teach the new folks more than I ever could. Next time, I am going to show you what my grandmother did to keep flies out of the kitchen, specifically during canning season, when the smell of cooking fruit draws them from every direction at once, using one ingredient from the pantry that nobody expects, and a method that worked for 100 years before sticky paper was ever invented. Subscribe. Do not miss it. Until then, seal the lid, hang the sachet, set the jar on the sill. And remember, the people who built this country with their hands knew things we are only just beginning to remember.